Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome back to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash. Welcome home to Torah. A warm welcome, the warmest welcome you can ever imagine. We love you being here in the audience, in the Beit Midrash, and as well as those on Skype and whoever's watching this afterwards. One of the goals we want everyone to go through is to learn Torah. Learn Torah. Learn Hebrew, right? So I want to remind you that in the description box below, there are links to the website where the original source sheets are posted. Please, for your sake, right? Follow along, keep a finger on the place. It'll do tremendous good for you. We are in Parashat Shoftim. Now I want to give a little bit of a caveat. We're going to talk about very contemporary issues with law and justice, with funding or defunding the police at the end, right? It's going to come up. These issues that are facing, I think, not just American society, but society all over the world. Anarchy, Antifa, whatever you want to call it, we're going to be dealing with those issues because Parashat Shoftim begins with the famous verse, right? Judges and officers shall you appoint in all your cities. Shoftim v'shotrim titein lecha b'kol sha'arecha. Okay, now this is specifically talking about Eretz Yisrael. The Torah is talking to the Jewish people, right? But it's also getting a message across to the world. Isn't that what we are, right? The Jewish people are God's ambassadors, right? That's what Yisrael means. Yashar El or Sar El. Sar is the name for an officer, for a ambassador, for a minister. A minister. Okay, we're the ministers. And in order to get to God, the word Yashar El, right, to go straight to God. So on a certain level, those who are Jewish who are watching know they have we'll call it a direct connection, right? And those who are not Jewish have some additional barriers. That's all. Now you can remove those barriers, just like the Jews are here to remove their own barriers. We also have barriers. Everybody has to work on themselves on whatever level they're on. And God is not prejudiced, put it that way. He might be a Zionist, but he's not prejudiced. Okay? So if every city in Israel, and we're supposed to teach the world, we all know one of the 7 Noahide laws is setting up a system of justice. There's a tremendous amount of wisdom and knowledge that the non-Jewish world should be able to learn from us. But the truth be told, we have to do it ourselves, right? We have to worry about ourselves and do it right, and through doing it right, there'll be peace. Whatever influence we could share with the world, right, by doing it right, it will have a profound impact on the world. Okay, so the first thing that Rashi mentions, and we're going to talk about Rashi in a second, let's talk about the Yakar. What we use here as the outline for the discussions is the Yakar, and he's quoting the pasuk, as I just mentioned, Shoftim v'shotrim titein lecha. The Shoftim are the judges, and who are the Shotrim? They're the officers. So right away you know that you need officers, you need enforcers. So not only the judges discussed here that you must have them, you must place them, you must appoint them, but you also need enforcers as well. But the rest of the verse goes on and says, Asher Hashem Elokecha notein lecha lishvatecha. Right? God is placing in all of your cities. Now, how Eretz Yisrael is divided up is according to tribes, and according to the tribes, you have cities, and every city has to have their own Beit Din, court and justices. And then it goes on and says, and they shall govern the people with due justice, meaning they should govern. They should judge the people righteously. V'shaftu es ha'am mishpat tzedek. That's the verse. Now, the Yakar has a few issues, okay? In number 2 of my source sheet in the English, it mentions the following, let's say, observations. By the Yakar mentioning these observations, we're supposed to understand these are questions. These are either anomalies in the text, where it's a drasha, the darshaning out, meaning there are lessons that are to be unraveled. Okay? So one of the things to pay attention to, it says in the beginning, Titain Lecha, you shall place over you, which means you as an individual. And then it says, the shaftu, it says v'shavtu et ha'am. Then as a result, they will judge the people. So you're placing over you personally, which is very strange, because the latter part of the verse is not consistent. They're going to judge the people. Why doesn't it say they're going to judge you? Now, that's the first question. He wants to know, how come it's not consistent where it says, shouldn't it say they're going to judge you, as in the beginning, place over yourself? So that's the first part. And then he says the word v'shavtu means that they will, as a result, judge the people. He claims that wouldn't it make more sense, the yishpatu, that they will, like they should, then judge the people, like future tense. As a result of you placing them over yourself, so to speak, by pointing them, then they're in a position to judge the, where they should be, future tense, where they will, as opposed to present tense, meaning we're going to call it hodat devarim. It's just an information, a piece of information. It's not a command. It's just a fact that they will judge the people justly. Okay, so follow this. You're going to place them over you, and as a result, they will judge others. They will judge the people as a whole. And that is the first paragraph pretty much. Now, Biur Inyanhu, the way he explains it is the following. In order to understand it, that verse is actually commanding those who are in a position to nominate candidates or judges for the position of being a judge. Shapasuk zet sivoy lemishiesh sipek biyado limanos dayanim. So, for example, in America, the President of the United States puts up as a nomination a Supreme Court justice. In many cases, a judge is even voted on by the people, but in also many cases, they're appointed. Okay? So if you're in a position, whether it was the president or one of these other people who can appoint a judge, what is likely to happen? I'll tell you what's likely to happen. The person who appointed the judge is likely to always be in favor in the eyes of the judge. Therefore, it opens the avenue for corruption, right? This Parsha is dealing with, specifically, as the Yakar said it is dealing with a command to those who are in a position to appoint a judge, Shemano otam almanat shiyu dayanim lo, v'lo yachanifu afilu lezeh hamamana osam, that the person who's in a position to appoint should appoint them, that they should be able to be over them, meaning the judge is over you, above you, and that you're not in a position to, the word yachifenu really means flatter, but we're going to use the word corruption, right? That is another concept. Even though the word literally means flattery, the showing favor is towards the person that appointed the judge. And therefore, this is one of the 613 commandments. You're not allowed to be in a position to flatter. You shouldn't flatter people. Flattering means there's nothing wrong with, showing people your appreciation, to put them up, and compliment them. But when there's strings attached, that's the problem, okay? When you flatter somebody with strings attached, that's a problem. In other words, to show appreciation and explain how much you appreciate them and talk about their good points, if there's no strings attached, that's appropriate, that's kosher, right? When you really mean it. So that's the problem here, that people will end up appointing judges. So when you appoint them, it must be without strings attached, okay? No favoritism towards the person who appointed. And that's why it says, Titain lecha, literally place them over you, al atzmecha, upon yourself, v'nimshach bezeh, and as a result, a consequence, what extends from doing it properly, kal v'chomer, meaning even more so, Sheyishpatu es kol ha'am mishpat tzedek. As a result that you know these people are totally honest judges, and they're not going to show you flattery because they're not that kind of character. They're going to judge the people as a result favorably, meaning not favorably as, I should say, righteously. They're going to judge the people truthfully, righteously, without showing favoritism. We're 4 lines down. Ki'im lo yachanifo gam lecha. These people who you're going to appoint as judges, they're not going to show any favoritism to you. V'kal v'chomer l'kol am, and they're not going to show any favoritism or corruption towards the people. And that's why it says v'shafatu, and they will, not a command form, but as a hodat devarim, as an information purpose, they will judge the people. Loshan hodat devarim, just as letting you know this is what will be. And leomar shekach yeh bevadai b'kal v'chomer. That will come out as a result, logically, okay? And then he goes into, now the Yakar lived 400 years ago. And he says what happened 400 years ago in his day. He says, Lo kaminhag dorenu. Not the way they behave in our lifetime, in our generation. That anyone who has the ability, or in his, it's his job description to appoint judges, shekol mi asher sipek biado, limanos dayanim. Anybody who has the ability to appoint judges, boirer lo, he chooses. Krodho o miyada'u. Either relatives or people that he's familiar with. He knows them. They're in the same political party, right? He's going to talk about not just relatives, but maybe people from your city, people you have camaraderie with. Doime ki'ilu hitna imo beferush almanat shechaniflo. That when this person, whether the President of the United States or the person that's in the position to appoint a judge, it's as if it's like you wink your eye, right? I'm appointing you, but you know that when I'm in trouble, you have my back, right? This is called corruption, okay? It's similar as if he made a condition with him, a pact, explicitly, even though he didn't. But this is the way it works in the corrupt political world, on condition that the person would show favor to him. The Kain Oisim, and that's how they did it 400 years ago. The Nimshach Nizeh, and what comes out of this as a consequence, as a result, Shagam Kol Ha'am, that when they judge the people, they're also not judging the people truthfully, righteously. Afilu Rechoikim. You know what would happen to someone who's not a person of the city or a relative, people who are very distant from the judge? Maybe he's not in the same political party. Lo yishpetu b'tzedek. The result is they will not judge them righteously or truthfully. Ki hadayin tzarich lahashvot kol hadinim. The truth is the judge is required. He needs to judge everybody equally, fairly. Shelo yomru lo, so that someone could not say to him. Now just imagine, a court has a gallery, there's people who watch. You know, if you're a law student, maybe you sit the whole day, you want to watch a court in session, you're a lawyer, so you're watching and you see case after case. Can you imagine the exact same case, all the variables are the same, except one is his relative, the judge's relative, and one is from a different city, or he's not of the same political party. So someone says to him, Etmo pasakta kak v'kak lekrovecha o lemiyudecha. You know, I witnessed, or leben yirecha, I watched you give a verdict, a handed down sentences to your own relatives, or people that I know that you know, or even a person of your own city. These are examples, but it could be your own political party. I saw what you did, v'akshav, but right now I'm watching you, ata mishana bedin kazeh. You gave a different verdict to someone else. It doesn't make any sense to me. Then you know that this system is corrupt. There's no justice. And that's a big problem. So the next paragraph begins like this. The al derech haremez yesh lefaresh. By way of, remez means a hint. There's a deeper understanding in these verses. By the actual word ha'am. We've discussed this before. Any time in the 5 books of Moses that the word the people appear, Rashi says that we're always talking about the Rashayim. The Rashayim are the evil ones. Other places, Rashi actually mentions these are the Erev Rav, the mixed multitudes. Another place he says they are the Pachutim, the inferior ones. The inferior ones, the Erev Rav, these are all the same. They're all Rashayim. They're all evil. And that's what he says. Sheb'kol makom shneimar ha'am, every place you find the word ha'am, midaber b'rashayim, we're talking about evil people. Like Rashi explains in Numbers, go to Numbers chapter 11, verse 1. It says, V'ya'am kimit onanim, the people were complaining. You'll find this on page 1, number 4. The people were complaining. The people were complaining. Look at Rashi. The people were looking to complain. Ha'am, the word ha'am, the people, is used only in reference to the wicked. Now, when it comes to Hashem and his relationship with the Jewish people, as a whole, he calls them Ami, my people. As he says in Exodus chapter 8:16, send forth my people. Okay? My people. Another place in Micha, chapter 6, verse 3, my people, what have I done to you? As opposed to this evil people, you can find in Jeremiah, chapter 13, verse 10. Okay, let's continue. We now understand the word ha'am as to mean the evil ones. And Chazal tells us in Pirkei Avot, this you can find in chapter 1, Mishnah 8. It says over there, as a judge, what do you have? How do you look at the litigants that are standing before you? So when the litigants are standing before you, look upon them as if they're both guilty. Now I know in America we say you're innocent until proven guilty. That's true. You are innocent until you're proven guilty. But once you step in that courtroom, the judge cannot look at both of you as innocent while you're standing there. You're obviously, one of you are guilty, but he has to look at you evenly. So he's not going to make any judgment. Imagine somebody walks into the courtroom, clean shaven, nice haircut, nice suit. Looks like a decent guy, and he's claiming the other guy stole from him. And the other guy looks like, let's say, a drug addict or some kind of, miscane, a bum who can't take care of himself. And you, as the judge, should not come to any conclusion that this clean-cut guy, businessman-looking guy, is innocent, even though he's making the claim. It could be a false claim. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Of course. So he has to say, look, in my eyes right now, until we get through this, now what happens once the judge gives the sentence, the determination of what has to be done, this guy has to pay the other guy money, guess what happens? As soon as it's accepted by either one of the parties, both parties accept the judgment, both parties are now looked as righteous. Okay? And that's what it says. It says, and when they leave your presence, look upon them as if they were both innocent when they accepted the judgment. Now, accepting the judgment is a very important part, because obviously if you give the judgment and the guy's going to scream and yell and not appeal in a proper way, so perhaps, I don't know, you call him contempt of court, and he has another list of guilt on him. Okay, anyway, so let's continue. We basically quoted Pirkei Avot, Kishabale dinim omdim lefanecha, when the litigants are standing before you, you beinecha k'rishayim. You should be looking at them as the judge, as if they're both evil. Now we understand why in our verse it says, the shaftu es ha'am. As a result, they will also judge the people. Ki b'shat ha'mishpat yu beinecha kashar ha'am. When they're standing there in the courtroom as litigants, making their claims, you're looking at them as all the rest of the people, which the ha'am means evil. Asher harashoyim mechunim behem, because the idea of ha'am and rishoyim are like nicknames that are interchangeable. They're basically the same in terms of character. Amnam, therefore, at the very end, when it says mishpat tzedek, the very end of that verse, meaning that the judge will give a righteous judgment, When is that? That's after. Achar mishpat. After the verdict has been given, yitapek harishut letzedek. Then whatever was evil, whatever was considered negative, is now transformed into positivity and righteousness. Kiyu beinecha k'tzadikim, and you as the judge, you will look at them as righteous. Kishikiblu aleim esadin. Once they both accept upon themselves whatever judgment you handed down. Davar acher. We're in the 4th paragraph. It says, Shoftim v'shotrim titein lecha, as we quoted the verse, right? Judges and officers you shall place. Now, what does that mean? Titein lecha, place upon yourself. Place upon yourself what? Kashot atzmecha tchila. You as a judge, what are you trying to accomplish? You want to bring justice into the world. You want to bring things that are fair, right? Because what's happening? This guy stole money or owes money, and therefore it's, as long as he's not paying it back, it's like stealing. So you want to make sure that the money goes back to the person it belongs to. So your job is basically giving rebuke. You're holding this other guy's money. You have to give it back, and everything will be fair. So before you can give rebuke to anybody else, before you can bring justice to everyone else, you have to act with justice. You have to beautify yourself first by working on your own character. You have to be in good stead. So it says, Kishot atzmecha techila, which means ornament yourself first. Make yourself beautiful. Be a beautiful human being through your character by acting justly. And only afterwards, v'shaftu esa'am. Then you can judge those evil people, l'kashet zulato. And then you can beautify others, because that's going to be your job as a judge. Kikol dayanid demafkin mine mamona bedina lav dayanahu. It's an interesting Gemara in Baba Basra. I underline the point in the middle of the paragraph. Any judge who is actually accused of something, remember, you're innocent until proven guilty. Any judge who's summoned to judgment and money is lawfully taken from him, meaning he lost the case and he has to pay money, guess what? It says he's not considered a judge. But the Gemara here in Baba Basra, 58b, has a question, of course. Aren't you innocent just because you were accused? So when they heard this, they wrote an addendum, in addition to the original inscription. And this is how they say it. The elders of the Jews say that any judge who is actually summoned in judgment, and they add the word and money is lawfully taken from him, is not considered a judge. In other words, if you have a record, it already went to court and you lost and you paid money, even though we say in the eyes of the judge you're both righteous, it doesn't matter. You can be righteous all you want. You cannot hold the position of a judge. If you were corrupt in the past, it's very nice. You can live your life as a good person, but you will not and should not be put into position to be a judge. Now we're going to go to verse 19. Again, we are in Parashat Shoftim. If you didn't know where we were, I apologize. We're in chapter 16 of Deuteronomy. We're now on verse 19. We started with 18, now we're in 19. And it says, Lo titam mishpat, lo takir panim, velo tikach shochad. Which means like this: do not pervert justice. I'm going to put a comma there. Lo takir panim, do not show favoritism. And now I'm going to add the word and. You'll see there's a vav. And don't take bribery. Now, notice there's only a vav after the third category. We listed three things: don't pervert justice, don't show favoritism, and don't take a bribe. There's only a vav. A vav is a mechaber. It connects. It's like the word and. The word and only appears between the second and third category. The Yakar wants to explain why category 3 is not a category in itself, but it's a subcategory of 2. So you have A and B, and then you have a subcategory of B. He says like this: Midolo kamar velo takir panim, the very fact that you do not have a vav by character 2 of don't show favoritism, but you do have a vav by the third category, do not take bribery. What do we learn from this? We learn that grouping number 1, which is do not pervert justice, grouping number 2, which is do not show favoritism, they are called like major categories in themselves. They are concepts that exist on their own. Kol echad milta ba'ape nafshe. That's how it's listed. But when it comes to lo tikak shochad, do not take bribery, it's a tolada. It's a subcategory of B, of number 2, do not show favoritism. Why is that? Let me say it outside. The word panim, lo takir panim, do not show favoritism, literally means do not recognize a face. The word panim is face. If you go to Genesis 41, verse 56, when Yosef was in charge of Egypt, and it said, now the famine spread over all the face of the land, and Joseph then opened up all the storehouses. He waited to open up the storehouses only when the famine affected everybody. Who are usually the last people to be affected by a famine? The rich people. The rich people, because either they have storehouses of their own, or because they still have money to buy things, or both, right? They have one or the other or both. So once it affected everybody, as the verse says, now the famine spread over all the face of the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses. Look at Rashi, the very beginning. Who are the face of the land? Panim, face. They are the rich. Once the rich were affected, then everybody was affected, because they're the last ones to be affected. So when you go to this point where it says, don't recognize a face, and then don't take bribery, would you ever even consider trying to get a bribe, take money from a poor person? You're jumping, there's like little chance to get even a penny. So the only kind of people that a person who's interested in taking a bribe from is someone who has money, which we would call them rich. Okay, so let's go back into the Yakar. He mentioned that when it came to do not take bribery, that is a subcategory of Group B, do not show favoritism, lo takir panim, since ashirim, rich people, are called penei haaretz, because they're called the face of the earth, as we saw in Rashi in Genesis 41, 56. Now, ukasha'amar lo takir panim, when it says do not show favoritism, it means the rich, which are called the face of the earth. Ukashlo takirem, when you don't recognize them, when they're not rich, as mamela lo tikak shochad. Obviously, you're not going to take any bribe. You're not even going to even hope for it. It's only when they're rich there is even a glimmer of hope that perhaps you might get a payoff. Ki amakir pnei ashirim hu ba'avor tikva hashochad shemekave lekabel mehem. It's only when you recognize someone as being rich that on account of that there's this little glimmer of hope of getting a bribe in order that you would receive from that person. Okay, I hope this is all clear at this point. We're going on to the very last line on page 1. The actual language, hataya, I translate it as perverted. Now, what does it really mean? It really means to lean. See how I'm leaning? Leaning. When we think about justice, there's scales, right? Just like the month we're about to approach is called Kislev. No? That's Hanukkah. Tishrei. Tishrei is the scales. What do you have in Tishrei? You have Rosh Hashanah, you have 10 days of Tshuva, you have Yom Kippur, you have 70 korbanos for the non-Jewish world on Sukkot, you have Hoshana Rabbah, which the whole world is sealed in judgment, the non-Jews. And then finally, on Shmini Atzeres, the final day for the Jews, just to imagine for a second, okay? That month's zodiac sign is the Moznaim, is the scales of justice, because the whole month is full of justice. Now, what are we talking about here? Hatiyah, the concept of hatiyah means to lean, meaning the scales of justice are leaning. Don't pervert them. Remember, you have to look at everybody equally. As it says, Shnei haba leidinim yushavim beinecha. both litigants have to be equal when they walk into your court, in your eyes. Shnehem munachim bekaf moznayim hashavim. As if they're both sitting in this scale of justice equally, not one leaning heavier than the other. Without one leaning more to the other side. Zeo inyan. That's what it means. Lo takir panim. Do not show favoritism. You have to make it as if you don't recognize either one of them. Even though you may. You have to make it like you don't. You have to be honest and try your best to be as objective as possible. Now, very interesting, the language of shochad literally means bribe, right? Do not take a bribe. That's what it says. Lo tikach shochad. So what are we talking about? The bribe is the money. Now, we don't know that yet. We don't, because we can use bribery as a verb, correct? But what do we call the people that are involved? We don't call them bribers. Is that a word? No. We call it the money. Now listen to what he says. According to Chazal, if you look in Gemara Kesubos 105b, and I underlined the point here, well, he says in the Yakar, Miloshon shuchad, shochad shehuchad, that he becomes one. The judge becomes one with the one giving the money. What does that mean? Look at the underline. It can be read as shuchad, as he is one, at one mind with the litigant. Innocent, right? Obviously, the one giving the bribe, he wants you to declare him innocent. Okay, so you're of one mind. The word echad and chad are the same root. Okay? That's at least according to the Gemara. You'll see the Yakar has a little bit of a difference of a nuance here. He's not happy with this opinion, but you can't go against the Gemara. So basically it's another level. So what does he say? We're on the second paragraph, the top line of the second page. Shemekabel v'hanotein nasu li shachad. That the judge, the one receiving the bribe, and the one giving the bribe, they become one. That's what the Gemara explained. They're one. A person does not judge himself unfavorably, right? You become one with him. Why are you going to declare him innocent? Because you didn't even think you did anything wrong by taking the bribe. You're like the most innocent kind of judge, right? That's how you think of yourself. It's very hard. It's very difficult for us to think anything negatively of ourselves. We always want to think positively. Well, that's all nice and good so far. Ein ze mechuvar. According to the Yakar, this is not so clear. He's not happy. And I'll tell you why he's not happy. Shochad shem hamamon. Because the word shochad, bribe, is really the name attached to the money. That's called the bribe. And not on the name of the litigants, not on the name of the owners, of the people, the one who gave it or the one who received it. Ki ba'avor shegoyim shabam yulachadim nikra mamon ashmam? Question mark, explanation point. What, on account of the fact that these human beings, these people, they become one-minded? That's why we're going to call the money on that name? Remember, it's the money, not the people. So here he goes. He says, Nir lefarish. The best way to explain it is this way. Shehu chad. Chad does not have to mean one. Chad can mean like the word chidud. Chidud means sharp. Sharp. Now, if you look in Proverbs 27:17, it says, Barzel ba-barzel yochad. Iron sharpens iron. Now, I have a little bit of being a chef in my background, and I know that a sharp knife, anybody who worked in the kitchen should know, a sharp knife is much easier to deal with. Truth is, it's more dangerous. You can get cut quite easily. But it can slice a tomato like quicker than, cutting through butter, right? Okay, or if you have a dull knife, you could be, you could squeeze that tomato till no end and still not cut it, right? Because it's a dull knife. So the sharper it is, the quicker it cuts. Okay, you hear what I'm going with this? So basically, he says like this, that the word in Hebrew, barzel ba-barzel yachad, the word, it means sharpen, yachad. What happens when you sharpen, right? If you had a microscope and you're looking at the very tip, so the tip gets sharper and sharper, it becomes more like one as opposed to something that's dull that might have, right? You know what I'm saying? It's sharp, so sharp, it comes to a thinner point, as we say, sharpness. So he says like this, Ki hamamon doma l'sachin mechudad chotek mehera, that the money itself is similar to a sharp knife that cuts quickly. V'kol dayan tzarich liot mitun shelo yichto chadin mehera, that every judge, just like it says in Pirkei Avos, a judge needs to be mitun bedin. We should all be like, because we're all judging all the time. We have to be slow and deliberate in our judgment. Don't be so quick. Okay? But when you receive money, ukishiki bel shochad, when you receive that bribery, what happens? It's automatically already a judgment has been made in your mind that this guy's innocent. He just gave you money. You got that envelope. You stuck it in your pocket. You know now what the verdict's going to be. Doesn't matter how long you deliberate, you've already determined that he's innocent. But once you receive that money, you know exactly, immediately, who is how. You know exactly which, how those scales are going to be determined right away. And you cut through that judgment quickly, just as one cuts through with a sharp knife. V'lo hadayan chotek hadin, and it's no longer the judge who's giving the judgment. Ela hamamon chotek. It was the money that cut the deal. The money made the deal. It's the money that cut through and made the verdict, huchad. And that is sharp. Ulefi sheramaz kan shadayan tzarich liot mitun dedin. We just discussed this idea that the judge has to be slow, deliberate, careful, modest when he brings down a judgment. V'al yedei zeh, and through this, through going through the evidence and thinking clearly, actually I should say it like this. If you, God forbid, don't, right, you're going to go quickly. What's going to happen? I'm sorry, let's just read the words and I'll explain it. Now if you go too slow, then what happens is you might come to oppress the judgment. By delaying the judgment more than is necessary. In other words, we just got discussing how you need to be going slow. But don't go too slow. Too slow can also have its ramifications. And that's why the end of verse 20 says, Tzedek, tzedek, tirdov, a double language. Righteousness, righteousness, you shall chase. Rodef, tirdov, chase. Ki shahanavi ma'ashim es Yisrael ba'amru. Isaiah, in the very first chapter, Isaiah chapter 1, verse 21, he says that righteousness rested in her. Understand, this is rebuke. Let me explain something outside. When you're sitting in a court, you're a judge, and you're sitting with your companions, and you're discussing where it's leaning towards. You didn't give a judgment yet. If you're leaning towards him being guilty in a capital crime, we're talking about the death penalty. We don't have all kinds of appeals and sitting in a jail cell for 20, 30 years. We take, when we have the Sanhedrin, of course, they take action quickly. The same day he's to be put to death, he's put to death in capital crime. So if you're leaning towards a guilty verdict, they decide we will make the announcement tomorrow. Why? Life depends on it. It's a good thing, okay? So if he's leaning towards innocence, they should declare it immediately today. Why, if he's towards the guilt, we wait till tomorrow? Because maybe there will be new witnesses. Maybe evidence will be discovered towards his innocence. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Okay, so what are we saying here? that Isaiah was rebuking the people because what they did, they were doing the opposite. They were taking people who were guilty, leaning towards guilt, and declaring their guilt today, taking out the judgment, and those who were innocent, leaning by night, Yalin, resting overnight on it. And let's read the words. Kederch Parashnu Lamala Parshas Devarim. You look at that verse, but in the previous verses, chapter 1, verse 18, you look at verse 17. Actually, I don't have it in front of me, but basically it's talking about setting up a system of justice. And then it says, I command you at that time, all the things you should do. There, it's a hint to the 10 different things that separate monetary cases from capital crimes, capital cases. This is not really, it's not really applicable to our discussion here, but basically he said he discusses it on that verse, meaning the Yakar went at length to discuss it over there. Shebidine nafashos goyimrim bo biyom lezachut. The idea is that when someone is leaning towards innocence and their life, it's a capital crime, we finish it. If they're innocent, we tell them they're innocent that day. Avalol lechova, but if they're going to be put to death, it's only the next day. Hein hafchu hashita. This is what Isaiah, he was giving them rebuke because the people at that time were reversing the procedure. Veheim melinim hatzedek. They were leaving overnight the righteous. Hainu haschut. People who are innocent, they remained incarcerated for an extra day. Al za'amar kan. Now we understand when it says shetzedek tirdof, righteousness you shall chase after quickly. What does it say? Kilashin redifa moira al hamihirus. The whole idea of roidef is pursuing, running. It means doing it quickly. Shimayer lichto hadin, that somebody should quickly, we're talking about the judge, they go quickly to give the judgment, the verdict, kishenit bayarer zuchuto, when they know and have clarified that they're leaning towards innocence. Hainu hatzedek, righteous. Now, righteous is doubled over. Tzedek, tirdof. So, kefel hatzedek, the very fact that tzedek is used twice, chad legufe, one means in terms of righteousness. You need to judge righteously, correctly. The chad lemayit achoyve shechayev lahalin. And the other one is to exclude the one where you're leaning towards a guilty verdict that you would be obligated to delay just by one day. Okay, I think we're going to read this last paragraph like this. Davar acher. Alternatively, the word shochad is considered like this, like a sword. Not just any sword, a sharp sword. Shehu chad kecherev choitech. It's like a sharp sword that does what? That cuts through. There's ivus hadin, when we're going to talk about inoy hadin. Ivus hadin is corruption. Inoy hadin is oppression, delaying justice. They're both just as bad. Kach ivus hadin, when there's a corruption in the court, it's mevi cherev chad le'olam. It brings, God forbid, it brings a very bad judgment onto the world. And I want you to look on page 4 when it says Pirkei Avot, chapter 5, 8. The bottom line says, a sword comes to the world for the procrastination of justice, the corruption of justice, and because of those who misinterpret the Torah. Okay, so we're dealing with both these ideas, that a cherev comes because of corruption. Like we learned in Pirkei Avot 5, 8, which we just read. Okay, cherev boy la'alam. The idea of a sword comes to the world, meaning horrible things. Al inoy hadin, also on oppression. Al ivus hadin. So now we understand for both. Lekak nikra shochad ma'avet hadin. So the shochad is going to go on what we're going to call the corruption part. That's called shochad because it's chad kecherev. It's sharp like a sword. V'akachach, his here, Gama Inoyedin. The same Mishnah in Pirkei Avos is explaining the Inoyedin, the oppression, meaning holding off, not giving it right away if he's innocent. And that's why it says, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, righteousness, righteousness you shall chase after, you shall pursue. Shemar lomar, that one should be quick to say, the judge, ploni almoni, ploni atazakai, if Joe Smith is, or Joel Schwartz is innocent, you should declare he is innocent. Legalo tzidkaso, to reveal his righteousness, laman tichyeh, in order that he shall live. Now I want to go to the next paragraph because that's going to be key to and summarizing everything we talked about. In order that he shall live, tinatzah min hacheref, to save the person from the sword. Okay, so you understand that if you do inoi hadin or ivui sadin, it can cause the cheref to come to the world, and it means that the innocent person could end up dying because you were too quick to give a negative judgment. Now, in the same verse, verse 20, it says, the Yarashta et haaretz. Now, it's a very interesting verse, and I want to make sure we have it clear. I think this is number 12 on page 4. Justice, justice shall you pursue. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Laman, why? That you may live and possess the land of the Lord, the land the Lord your God is giving you. Yirishta et haaretz asher Hashem Elokecha notein lecha, notein loch. Okay, that this is in order for you to be able to live in the land, and it's very important. And I think this is a very important, not just to Jews, but to, as we say, the Bnei Noach, even outside the land of Israel. Perish Rashi. What do we know by this verse? Rashi mentions that, what does it mean that you may live and actually possess the land? The appointment of fitting judges is sufficient merit to keep Israel alive and settled in their land. Okay, so apply it as you want where you live. Without the merit of appointing righteous judges, you are basically forfeiting a settlement. You're forfeiting the ability to live in that place. So I'm hoping all my Jewish brothers and sisters will understand what we're talking about here. That's what Rashi says. Listen, Kedaihu minoi hadayanim ksherim. It's fitting, right, in the merit of appointing righteous judges, kosher judges, achiyot es Yisrael, in order to keep Israel alive, ulahoshivam al ad masam, in order for them to be able to dwell in their land. Now, the word lahachiyos is in order to keep yourself alive. If we hadn't learned this, if we didn't have fear, if there was no fear, if there was total anarchy, if people didn't have some fear, I'd say a healthy fear hopefully, of the government, ish es re'eyu chayim bolu, as it says in Pirkei Avot, chapter 3, Mishnah 2, it says, Rabbi Hanina, deputy to the Kohanim, would say, pray for the integrity of the government, for were it not for the fear of its authority, a man would swallow his neighbor alive. Ish et re'ehu chayim below. Right, that would be absolute anarchy. You couldn't walk in the streets. And I hate to tell you this. I mean, you watch the news. There are certain cities that there's certain parts of certain cities that, you wake up Sunday morning and you find out 30, 50, 70 people, maybe even more, shot at. People are beaten in the streets. And you know what happens? I want to save this for the end, but you all know what happens. The police are being defunded. The police anyway try to bring them in. Then there's a rule that says he can be freed without bail, right? First of all, the prosecutor says we're not prosecuting him. And even if they would let him go the next day. And he goes out, the person goes out and commits either the same crime or worse because there's no fear of the government. I hope I'm making myself crystal clear. Okay, now, let's see what happens. Lechach amru, this is why they say, Sheminoi dayanim garm liyos, by appointing kosher judges, fit judges, you're causing the people to live. Rotzolamar, meaning to say, people will not swallow each other alive. Shelo yivla ish asreu chayim. And then as a result, lahoshivam al masam, they will be able to dwell in their land. As it says in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 4, Melech b'mishpat yamid aretz. It's the king establishes the country with justice, but a haughty man tears it down. So we have this verse in Mishlei. King Solomon was a pretty smart guy. Avokikul adinim goyim hashchasas haaretz. But the whole ruining of the justice system causes a destruction. I hope this message is coming across clear. V'dur hamabul yokiach. Now, for those that are familiar with the flood of Noah, this alone you should have gotten the message then, right? It's crystal clear over there that because of the hashchat, because of the corruption of the flesh and the destruction, that's right, we saw destruction from that. But Jethro himself says it in Exodus chapter 18, verses 23, but I'll say 22 and 23, right? It was his idea. He says, they shall judge the people at all times, and it shall be that any major matter they shall bring to you, Moshe, and they themselves should judge every minor matter, meaning the whole tier system of different size courts, thereby making it easier for you, Moshe, and they shall bear the burden with you. It's not just on your shoulders. And then this is the most important thing. Jethro says, if you do this thing, you have a proper system of justice, and the Lord commands you, you will be able to survive. You'll be able to what? To live. And also, all this people will come to their place in peace. We're going to focus now on some of these ideas about coming to their place in peace, because it's a very strange language. The gam kol ha'am hazeh al makomo yavo b'shalom. And also, this people in their place will come in peace, or let's use their translation, will come upon their place in peace, which means like this. Havalele meimar. The Yakar says what it should have said is each person, al makomo, in his place, yoshe b'shalom, will dwell in peace. That would make a better flow of the verse. But again, we're not God. God has a message. Let's wake up and smell the coffee and hear what God wants. Elish medaber b'makom klali hamiyuchad l'kolam. So it doesn't say each person, right? Each person should sit under his own fig tree, right? Next to his own pool, in his own yard. No, it says also the whole people. The whole people. We live with other people. We're not an island, right? We're not sitting on an island. We're not sitting as like a guru or a monk on some mountaintop by ourselves. All the people. So it says like this, we're speaking about a place, klali, a general place, that is miyuchad l'kolam, that is either unique or I would say designated for everybody. Asher beit ratzah levo shama. So we're talking about a time where you want to go there. This is like a goal. We want to get there. We want to arrive to that place. So Amar Yisro b'schut minoi danim yizku levo shama. And Yisro, remember that he was in the desert with us. We don't even know if he came in the end to Eretz Yisrael who stayed there. But he's telling Moshe, you want to get there. You want to get to the promised land, man. The promised land, and you want to stay there. So you better get your act together with the Dayanim. You want to have a Yishuv Aretz. You want to be able to dwell in the land in peace. You must have proper judges. And that's basically how the Yakar ends this piece. The truth is, he goes on, but we don't have time to go through anymore because I have to go to Sheva Brachas, Baruch Hashem, Mazel Tov. But I just want to mention that this idea of corruption, when you have a legal system that is corrupt, and I mentioned already where they say that, yeah, you don't have to pay me bail, just go home, right? Wrongdoing, not even wrong anymore, right? I can sympathize, right? Like in California, if you steal less than $900, they can't do anything. You go in and you choose a TV, the newest TV, I don't know what the newest one costs, but $899, you can walk out free. I'm not encouraging this, trust me. I'm not encouraging. I'm just telling you how corrupt the system is. You didn't even do anything wrong if you stole less than $900 in the system's eyes. Do you realize how wrong that is? And that's why all these companies, Walmart, Best Buy, whatever it is over there, they're leaving. They don't want anything to do with California. Because why should they? They'll just go bankrupt. Everyone will walk in. What happened? What happened in Sodom, right? Sodom. People would steal. Someone would walk through the market carrying a big basket of fruit, and everyone would take one grape because it's less than a sheva pruta. It's almost meaningless. By the time the guy got to the end of the fruit market, he looked at his basket. There was nothing in there, and you couldn't take anybody to court because the court system said, we don't recognize if you steal less than a certain amount. We don't care. It's not a crime. We're not going to judge those cases. Okay, so not only did the door of Mabul, the generation of the flood, prove our case with the destruction, but also Sodom. That's a good example. Basically, if you steal less than $900, you get out of jail free card. And now, what about defunding the police? Shoftim v'shotrim titein lecha. You should be paying for it. Of course, we need it. We need to instill some level of a healthy fear. And it shouldn't be fear. Obviously, I've seen some of these videos where the police are just so kind and so nice, and they go to the inner neighborhoods, where the people have a lot of risk of turning out bad, and they play basketball, and the police athletic league. I just remember my grandfather. He was a big brother in the police athletic league in Philadelphia, and he used to take me to the fights. He used to take me to the boxing ring, and he says, "Yeah, I sponsor that guy. I sponsor that guy." He'd buy them school supplies. He was like, they didn't have a father at home. And so, there's so many things you can do. So this was organized by the police. There's so many things that the police are doing to try, and to no avail because the system is so corrupt. So many police are just quitting, resigning early, and who wants such a job? So obviously the whole system has to be revamped to get back to our morals, back to the Torah. And this is only the beginning. I didn't go through the whole Yakar. So I invite you to open up a Yakar yourself. Now that you got some Hebrew, right? If you paid attention, you went through the words, the same words will appear again sometime. And so I want to wish everybody a fantastic Shabbos. I want to mention we're in the month of Elul. Soon the whole world's going to be judged. Let's get our act together, right? We'll be judged by Hashem. So let's fall in line, right? Let's do what we need to do as human beings, as Jews, non-Jews, whatever category you're in. And hopefully you'll be a righteous Gentile and want to convert. Get in touch with me. There's plenty of people. I'll just direct you to someone else. I'll help you. I'll guide you. That's all I can do. But anyway.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, anyway, so Shalom Aleichem. Kol Tuv. Yes.
Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh,